right, top of the hour. Welcome everyone to today's webinar, Why Data Quality and Automation Matter in Carbon Accounting. Today we're going to spend some time contextualizing for you all the critical need of automated anomaly detection and data quality review to support public emissions disclosures and organizational inventories, whether you're actually reporting those publicly for something that's going to go through assurance or a mandated disclosure, or just in a standalone ESG report. We are going to kick it off right at the top of the hour. We usually wait a couple seconds, but no time like the present. I'm Alyssa Raid, for those of you who don't know. I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer here at Sustain.Life, and I'm joined today by Jasmine Zhuang, Sustain.Life's Head of Product, who will expertly be leading us through a demo on the back half of today's webinar, highlighting the new feature that we've launched on anomaly detection and automated data review. But Jasmine, for those who are not yet familiar with our webinar series and these product demos, can you share a bit about your role at Sustain.Life?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for coming to our webinar today. I'm Jasmine Zhuang. I'm our head of product here at Sustain.Life. My role is to work across many of our teams, including Alyssa's sustainability team, our design and engineering teams, to build out everything that you see in our application, all of our current features, as well as gathering feedback from our prospects and user base to help improve the product to really meet everyone's needs as they evolve in this space. So excited to show you the feature in our demo, but hand it back to Alyssa for now.
Awesome. Thanks, Jasmine. And speaking of meeting needs, we know that this is one that so many of our customers and those of you out there have asked about. And so we're really excited to show it to you today. So just for those who are new to us and are unfamiliar with Sustain.Life, who are we? We're a decarbonization SaaS platform empowering companies to take climate action. And what that means is we're helping companies measure, manage, report, and disclose emissions across that alphabet soup of voluntary and now, in many cases, mandated frameworks. And so while you'll only see a small piece of our platform today, we do encourage you to book a demo on our site to learn more about our full platform and capabilities. So let's dig in. The agenda today is we are going to be demoing one of our new features that's intended to help you address errors in your inventory and improve accuracy over time. So this is all about data quality and good data governance, which is a real opportunity for technology to shine through when you are compiling your inventories. It's really so much of the value of taking this out of a manual process and into a technology platform. So we're just going to start pretty simply by discussing some of the common data problems that actually happen when you're developing your greenhouse gas inventory in reality and in pragmatic practice. And then we'll move on to discussing the importance of data accuracy in your reporting. Finally, the exciting part, Jasmine will lead us all on a demo of the new anomaly detection and data quality review feature, followed by some Q&A. Quick housekeeping, I should note, if you do have any questions throughout either the initial deck review here or the demo itself, please submit them to the Q&A feature and we will do our best to get to them on the back half. And reminder, we will also share today's recording with all registered attendees. Okay, so let's dig into this. What are some of the common data issues that can actually arise when you're developing your greenhouse gas inventory? First and foremost, it's as simple as human error, especially if you are entering data manually or manually pulling into spreadsheets and consolidating from various data sources, doing things like adding an extra zero or fat fingering or uploading the same entry twice, effectively doubling your consumption with a duplicative entry, right? Then we have just the problem of missing data. So perhaps you can't track down the last fuel invoice for the last month, or your utility provider hasn't provided it yet. And you want to use some representative data while you actually wait to get that from your providers or your suppliers. And so it's not that you had zero consumption or activity, you just don't have that data yet. And then finally, big spikes, right? Or dips in your activity data. And that can be indicative of operational problems. And knowing, frankly, when these spikes occur naturally within your activity and consumption cycles really helps you pinpoint when you have an actual operational cycle across your actual operation, or that kind of automated anomaly detection highlights deviations that are outside of your standard norm. And that's part of the feature that we're really excited about is essentially training our model to understand your historic data so that if it looks like you're at a 2.5 increase year over year for April consumption, that should flag an error, right? Because that's atypical from your historic and expected consumption. And so addressing all of this is about continually improving the quality of your inventory and data governance process. And when we look at this process chart below, it's important to really have that feedback loop between entering the data and reviewing it for errors, especially prior to any kind of third-party verification or assurance or actually publishing your report. Oops. And data accuracy in reporting is important for a couple reasons. And I'm sure most of you on the line are intimately familiar with this, of having done your inventories and had them be verified. But first and foremost, this is about maintaining accountability and credibility over the numbers that you publish, right? Catching problems early ensures that you don't have to restate the big R, the bad R word, or make corrections to your inventory from data problems. That shouldn't be something you have to do. It's also critical because you always want to be taking action on the highest quality data possible. So if you're doing something like setting science-based targets and investing your critical resources into actually decarbonizing and hitting those targets, and then reporting publicly on that improvement and process, you want to make sure that your baseline numbers that you're working off of are sound. And lastly, we are seeing more and more regulation coming out that expects some level of assurance, right? Which means that third-party auditors are going to be combing through your data, your activity data, your internal controls, your emissions outputs. And of course, you want the data that you're bringing to your reviewer to be in its top form. And so just to speak quite briefly on some of the major regulations and mandates that we see, California recently passed the Climate Corporate Leadership and Accountability Act, which we affectionately refer to as SB 253. And that's requiring companies that make over $1 billion in revenue and operate within the state of California to obtain assurance for scope 1 and 2 as early as 2026, with assurance for scope 3 as early as 2027. If we look all the way across the pond, we also have the EU CSRD, which again requires assurance across broad sustainability disclosures, and then with a phased timeline of limited and reasonable starting in 2026 with reasonable in 2028. And then if we look to some of the proposed laws that we're anxiously awaiting their final rule, we have, of course, the SEC proposed rule, enhancement and standardization of climate-related disclosures. And that, again, that limits assurance to scope 1 and 2, but employs a similar phase-in period with limited assurance beginning as early as fiscal year 2024, it's coming up, and reasonable in fiscal year 2026. Similarly, in Australia, the Treasury does have a draft rule requiring climate reporting, also again, limited assurance for scope 1 and 2. And so why we bring this up is because for those of you that are mandated by these disclosures, or even on the scope 3 side, falling within that value chain, the data is going to be combed through by a verifier. And so you want to make sure that you have all of that automated review and anomaly detection to make sure that there weren't simple entry errors or just mistakes in the data. And it's really important to catch all of those problems upstream so that you're streamlining your assurance process as much as possible. For those of you who have gone through it, you know it's onerous, and the more that you can make that a streamlined and problem-free process, the better. You don't want to be going back and forth with your assurer when you have to hit your reporting deadline. And so this data quality is a critical part of strong data governance to support integrated reporting. So that's just a little bit on the context that we want to set. Hopefully that's nothing new. It's actually probably quite familiar to those of you on the other side of the line. But I'm going to kick it over to Jasmine now, who's going to walk us through a demo of our new feature.
Thanks, Alyssa. So I'll go ahead and share my screen so you can see our new feature. Before I dive into the meat of it, I did want to provide some context on our platform as a whole to show you a little bit more context around why data quality is important and in terms of the types of features that it can help you prep for. So Sustain.Life is a platform that helps companies of all sizes measure, manage, and report their environmental impact, namely their carbon emissions, but also other areas of environmental indicators, as well as social and governance. So we have a whole suite of calculators that helps you track and translate various business activities that you see here to carbon emissions. And that includes everything from your energy consumed in your buildings to your purchases from your suppliers. And you can use the data to track over time, see your total carbon emissions footprint, and then move on to those next steps that Alyssa mentioned around setting a reduction target, reporting your progress, disclosing your emissions data to international frameworks and disclosures, as well as getting your data audited. And so it's really key that our platform not only supports you entering and translating your data to emissions, but giving you that confidence to move on to those next actionable steps. So that's why we're excited to launch our new data reviewer feature that you'll see here. This is a feature that introduces these automated enhancements that flag several types of issues and help you fix them before moving on to those important next steps. So I'll go ahead and just dive into the data reviewer feature, which you'll see under our measure pillar. Here, you'll be able to see all of your data in one place easily. So you'll be able to select your start date and view a whole 12-month time period that you're interested in reviewing. And then you can also filter to more specific locations and categories if you want to do a more targeted review. But I'll just stay on the screen that shows you your entire inventory in one place. And you'll see that we've laid out all of your inputs across these various business activities in the units of measure that you've entered them, and also provides you some aggregate numbers around the total emissions that yields at your category and your location level parent. So it makes it easy for you to easily see issues and trends, but not only laying this out all in one place across all of your data, which could be a lot, but we actually help you pinpoint through the use of technology and through the use of the logic that we've built to automate the flagging of any issues that we consider to be common types of errors that might occur. So to start off with, I'll review the 3 main types of issues that we'll be able to highlight for you. We have data gaps. Those are where you're missing values, meaning that you've entered values for a certain kind of category in the past, or you've indicated in your settings for that location that that indicator is relevant to your company and that you intend to enter data for it. But you might have been missing data, you might have left off a month, or you might have not had a bill for a certain month and intended to come back and fill it in later. So we'll flag those data gaps for you. We also have duplicates that can happen with values that you've entered for the same location and category that are exactly the same. Usually this would probably be an unintentional duplicated data that you don't intend to actually contribute to your full carbon emissions inventory because it's actually contributing more than you actually used. So we'll flag those for you. In the case that it is a real duplicated value that you happen to have 2 different meters that had the exact same reading, you can always ignore that, but we want to make sure to flag them to you. And then lastly, anomalies are issues where you've inputted data where the values lie outside the expected bounds that we have for you. And that's all based on the data you've previously entered, as well as some logic that our team has put together in terms of what we consider normal bounds. So we'll flag those for you so that you can review them and either fix them or confirm that they're accurate. And so with that, we'll go into a few actual examples of each of the 3 of these to give you some more color. So around data gaps, you'll see below you have all of your data and you already see some flagged data here. To make it really easy to review, you can click this flag icon here, and that will automatically narrow down your table to only those issues you need to review, still in the context of the location and the types of data that you're seeing and the categories that they fall into. So for example, here you'll see that for my first class business travel flights under my Texas location, I have most of my data, but I'm missing data for February. So here, if you don't have any activity and you meant to actually enter a 0, we'll guide you to either enter a 0 or update your settings to say it's not applicable. But in this case, you see that we actually had data for every other month, and this was just an oversight. And so if you have your data from a primary source, you can go ahead and enter it here. If you actually just are missing data for that month for some reason, you can generate an estimate. And so this is what our system is doing to take the data that you've previously entered or entered for the rest of the year and generating an estimate for you that is interpolated from the rest of your data. You'll go ahead and generate that estimate. We'll fill in and calculate the emissions number, and then you can go ahead and save. And so you can really treat this as a workbook where you're going through each of your data flags. You can see how much of your data it affects. For me, it's actually a pretty small amount of my data, as you can see here. But you want to go through each of the flags and either resolve them or confirm that they're actually the way they're supposed to be. So that's an example of a data gap. In the future, we'll be able to help you differentiate your final inventory between data that you've entered that's real primary data that reflects data, for example, from a bill, or that you've collected from your travel provider, versus the data that we've generated for you as an estimate to give you some indication of the overall data quality of your inventory. So that's something that you'll see in upcoming phases of this feature. Next, for duplicates, this one's pretty straightforward. So you can see here for my Sydney location, I have 2 entries for my renewables and 2 entries for my natural gas usage that are exactly the same. So we flagged these 4 duplicates here. What we want to do here is have you confirm whether that's actually accurate or not. If it's accurate, you can just go ahead and confirm, and then the flag will go away and you can move on to the next one. If for natural gas, you want to delete it, this was a real duplicate that you entered accidentally twice, you can go ahead and zero it out and save, and then your flag will disappear as well. And then lastly, for anomalies, here's the example of the 16 anomalies that we've identified for this account. And so you'll see a bunch of examples here. And to reiterate what Alyssa mentioned, there are several examples of why you might actually have anomalous data. It could be something that's fat-fingered. So for example, for my landfill trash, mostly you can see that my total pounds of trash that I've entered is 19,000. In this case, I put in 1.9 million. So I entered some additional zeros here. And so our system can automatically flag that this is an error. You'll see what the expected range is based on the data that you've entered before. And because this value falls outside of the bounds of the expected range, we'll flag this. So again, you can either confirm that it's accurate, or you can go ahead and fix it. So in this case, I will fix it by moving the decimal point over. It'll then fall within the expected bounds, and your flag will go away the next time that you review. There are some other examples of where we're flagging data that might just represent some real ups and downs and real trends in your business activities, and that can reflect operational issues that you might want to dig deeper into. So even though the number itself is accurate, this can be used to help you identify those areas to really dig more deeply into and resolve from an operational perspective. And with that, that's about the meat of the data reviewer feature. And from here, you can go ahead and move on to those next steps of target setting, or pulling your data for sustainability reporting, and ultimately getting your data assured. And we hope that this feature makes it really easy to flag any issues and have automated fixes to make that process easy and smooth with the power of technology. So I'll go ahead and stop sharing, and then we'll answer any questions if any have come in.
Awesome. Thanks, Jasmine. So there's a couple that I'm triangulating across the Q&A. One question that came in that I do think would be valuable just to answer for everybody. Thomas asked if we have the ability to fill in data manually, or if we can upload it, or better still, auto feed it into the system. And so I do think we have some time in here. And so perhaps for others that have the question, we could briefly walk through the 3 ways that we support data, always pushing users through automated data ingestion and integrations, and then of course a little bit of our bulk import templates, and then the manual entry option.
Great, I can go ahead and reshare my screen then. Right, so as Alyssa said, we have a few different ways of getting data into the system, and it's an interesting tie-in to this feature because there are different types of data entry, and some of them tend to be more accurate than others. So I'll just go to an example of my buildings data. The easiest way to enter your data is manually, right? You're actually typing in the data here. You're seeing the results in real time of your emissions calculation. You can attach your utility bills here and add any notes, but this is also prone to manual error. As you see, it's pretty easy for me to actually accidentally type in an extra 0, and that will make my emissions 10 times higher than they should be. And this is something that our data can flag, especially if you've only entered this in for 1 month and the rest of your months are accurate. So that's the most straightforward way of entering your data, but a much easier way of doing it is our bulk import feature. And so this allows you to upload data for months or years at a time. and you can do it via an Excel spreadsheet that you can download and then fill in the data. So this could be a little bit more accurate because you're actually entering all of your data across all your months in one go, but still prone to manual error, especially if you're typing in the data or you're pulling in your data from other different sources of data. And then probably the most accurate one and the most automated is our integrations. And so based on your location, you can add in a utility integration. And we're using a variety of utility aggregators to actually speak directly to your utility provider data, pull down the bills, and take the information straight off of your bills. So this one I would say is the least prone to manual error. But there could be a mapping issue or something like that where we're pulling in data that is inaccurate. And so the data reviewer feature can still catch issues where either something has been remapped in the system and your plan name has changed, and now we're not pulling in the data correctly. But the integrations allow you to connect your utility provider account directly. You can enter your credentials, set it up one time, and then from there on, every time there's a new monthly bill, we'll pull in your data automatically and attach the PDF for easy usage. And so something that will be helpful there when you go back to the data reviewer feature and you pull up an example entry, you'll be able to see the attachment of your bill directly here, and you'll be able to easily compare the number that we've pulled to the number from the PDF. So the great thing about our platform is it puts it all in one place. So there's no trying to check between Excel docs or check between a different platform and ours. All of it can live within one.
Awesome. Thanks, Jasmine. We got another question from Giovanni that I was typing an answer to, but I think, again, is really good to share more broadly. For supplier data, do we have a way that they can input their data, or is that something that the user needs to fill? So we probably can't show you all of this, but we will post a link to a separate webinar. We have an entire feature dedicated to supply chain engagement, where customers can reach out to their suppliers and solicit emissions and broader sustainability. So we will post the link to that publicly in the chat here. But the short answer is that, yes, we have a way for you to directly engage with your suppliers, and we're actually enhancing that feature. And we'll be launching that in the first quarter, where we can actually automate a lot of that. And so you don't even have to send those solicitations and requests, but we can automatically pull from previously reported data, existing user accounts, and publicly posted sustainability and ESG reports, which really harmonizes and streamlines those scope 3 emissions, as you can gather a lot more data than you'll actually get responses from your suppliers. Awesome. And then I had one more question, Jasmine, that also came in, asking us if we could give a bit more of a peek under the hood and explain how the interpolation tools work with those historical records, and kind of flagging those anomalies based off of previous activity data.
Yeah, so I can answer that. That's based on logic that we have built into the system. So the way that the interpolation logic works is based on the surrounding entries. And so that takes into account some of the seasonality. So we're not taking the whole year, for example, but if you're missing a bill from February, we'll interpolate based on your bills from January and March that are directly surrounding it, or the closest entry that we can find that's surrounding it, so that we come up with the best estimate possible. And again, that is based on your own data for that specific category and for that location. So it counts for regional differences as well. And then for anomaly detection, that's based on some standard settings that we've put together in terms of what we consider normal bounds of your data. And so that can all be adjusted and eventually customized, especially as we get more and more data into the system and we get more feedback from users on whether that's a real anomaly or not. And we can use that to retrain what we determine to be flagged. But for now, those are based on settings that we have chosen to balance out flagging data that we think is important to flag, but also making sure that we're not flagging too many false positives, because we want to make this process that actually makes the best use of your time and pinpoints the time you're putting into review. But that is based on the data, again, that you've entered for that location, for that specific data point, and coming up with those normal bounds. And you'll see that adjust from month to month. So as let's say that your electricity usage has spiked because your building is now using more energy, or you're in a seasonal period where it's higher, that will all adjust based on the new data that you enter, and it'll be dynamic.
Awesome. Great. Okay, now they're really pouring in. We got another question from Anonymous asking essentially about ways specific to property managers and landlords in a real estate use case to input information directly and assign specific data requests. So thinking about permissioning, delegation, limiting access across locations for certain inputs. That's work that we are currently doing right now. So anonymous attendee, definitely reach out to us because we do have already some existing user-based permissioning and access specific to sites and are continuing to build that out across certain categories. And again, the idea of reviewers and editors. And so that will all be going live soon as well. Great. And then we got another one that's perhaps a little broader, but is essentially asking about differentiations of the Sustain.Life platform across all the other SaaS decarbonization and carbon management platforms that are out there. And I think it's worthwhile for us to talk about those live. I'm sure a lot of you have those questions. It's a delicate balance, I think, of balancing the rigor and the technical credibility of your platform with the access, both in terms of usability and intuitive UI and actual ability to move through that platform. And then of course, a price point as well. And so a couple of differentiators that Sustain.Life really likes to hang our hat on. One is, I'm not part of the technology team, so I can say this as a compliment to them without taking credit myself. The technology team that's building this product is really incredible. They are used to working with incredible volumes of large scale data. And so when we think about some of these features around scale and automation, whether on the ingestion side or the data anomaly side, the power of the platform really is best in class enterprise grade technology. And we do try to be product led wherever we can. We really want companies to feel autonomous in their carbon literacy, in their sustainability literacy, and really own the actions and operations of managing their carbon footprint and decarbonizing. And so a lot of the product-led support and in-help guides, you'll see that there's just a lot of support that is directly inside our product. Of course, we're always here to help you as well if you want, a little bit more of that kind of experience, but I'd say that's a differentiator as well. And another one I'd mention is that we are primarily focused on carbon and decarbonization, but we work with a lot of companies that are looking for a single tool to really support their broader sustainability and ESG. And so maybe, Jasmine, I don't know if we have time to show a quick screen share of the robustness of the Sustain.Life platform, but this includes things like broader sustainability reporting. So if you're looking for a CDP or a TCFD and actively looking to expand that to your other alphabet soup, really nice automated features that harmonize that disclosure process across the frameworks so that it is less work for you. You don't have to do the same thing 5 times. You don't have to iterate or try to take your data and put it across different indicators. The Sustain.Life platform is taking your underlying activity data, and we are actually automating based off of the frameworks and reports that you say are most important to you, the actual line item metrics and outputs specific to each of those frameworks. Jasmine, I don't know if you want to do a little voiceover as you scroll through our sustainability reporting feature here. If not, I'm happy to keep going. There's a lot. So yeah, I'll keep going. Don't worry. Also on the managed
Sorry, I was just trying to mute myself, but I'm happy to quickly go through some of the things that I kind of glossed over as I was talking about the data reviewer feature. But it's really important to show, even in the context of that feature, because the main reason that you'd be wanting to improve the confidence that you have in the accuracy of your inventory is because you're actually going to use that data to help power decisions that you're making down the line. So I'm just showing off our sustainability reporting feature, and we have a previous webinar on this that will go through this in a lot more detail. But what this is doing is taking all of the data that you've input into the platform that we've guided you to input based on whether you're looking to track against CDP, TCFD, in the future GRI, and other frameworks. And it spits out the data in exactly the format that you need it for those sections of the disclosure and framework. And so there's no mapping you need to do offline. You don't have to use messy Excel files. All of this is downloadable straight into an index that you can use to fill out your disclosure form or to put your sustainability report together. And of course, you don't want to be reporting data that's wrong or that's over or understating your emissions. And that's where the data reviewer feature becomes really handy. And the other part that would be helpful to show off is just our target setting feature. again, if you're going to be publicly committing to certain reduction targets, so you've heard of people setting near-term 2030 targets or long-term net zero targets out in 2050, you want that data to be based on a sound base that you're really confident it accurately represents the inventory of your company. And so in order for you to do that and set your final target, you're going to want to make sure that your base year emissions are accurate and you feel confident in them. And then our platform also helps you then set a science-based target. So it takes all the criteria of the Science-Based Targets Initiative and other frameworks and helps you set targets that align with them. So it gives you the confidence not only to know that your base year emissions are correct, that you're building off of, but that you're setting a credible target that actually makes sense for your organization to commit to. And then lastly, the feature that is probably most relevant as well to the data reviewer feature is the auditing feature. And so this allows you to set up an audit for your third-party assurer to come in and actually view all of the inputs that you've put in, all the emission factor sources that we're using, and it shows you exactly the math and formulas that we're using. And so again, you want to make sure that that data is accurate before your assurer comes in, so there's not a lot of back and forth. But at the same time, if there needs to be some back and forth, it can be facilitated through the use of this feature. So hopefully that helps provide a little bit of context.
Great, cool. We did get another question around sectors that the tool is best for, with a couple of examples. And so we say any company that this is a commercial tool, right? So some of the examples here were government, private, residential, commercial. Our tool is for any company that needs to set an organizational emissions inventory. And so if you are looking at greenhouse gas protocol, if you're familiar with kind of the gold standard of what we've essentially automated into the app, but the greenhouse gas protocol, corporate standard, and scope 3 value chain, any sector can be supported here. And I think that we're supporting companies across almost every sector when you look at the sector codes, like across CDP. So if you are any of those companies, definitely please come in and talk to us. We've designed this tool to be industry agnostic, broadly applicable, and really suited for companies that, again, are looking to automate their emissions inventorying process, set science-based targets, engage with their supply chain, and really decarbonize towards net zero ultimately. Okay, great. We did get a question also around CDP. Yes, we do facilitate CDP disclosures. We do have the in-app functionality, and we can also support additionally across your disclosure with services if that's something that you're interested in. So please do definitely reach out to our team. Okay, great. I think I have made it through most of these. It is always an effort to manage this. Great. Okay, we got another one on how does the SBTI feature work for reporting? And that's actually a really great question because we get this all of the time. And no, SBTI does not have an open API that we can just automatically push things into. We wish that they did. They do not offer it. So for companies that are looking to set a science-based target and then have it be validated by SBTI, you still do, no matter how you do it, whether you work with a technology platform or a consultant, or you are doing this on your own, congratulations if that's the case, you do have to go and submit through SBTI's portal. What the Sustain.Life feature is helping you do is automate all of the back-end math to essentially develop the credible target. Make sure we have all the guardrails, similar to how you saw the anomaly flagging in place for this feature. Similar logic almost, frankly, with the anomaly detection or kind of guardrails on, is your inventory complete? Have you considered all of your relevant categories? Do you have the right percentage of emissions across your categories to have a robust inventory? How much of it is estimated? How much of it is measured? And so we're really automating all of that. And then, of course, giving the glide path of how you achieve either your near-term or longer-term target. And then giving, real-time tracking so that as you deviate from that glide path, giving the insight into where you need to focus your efforts to get back on track towards that decarbonization plan. Okay, great. Another question of how much of the structure and tools align with ISO 14064, critical and validation. Yes, our emissions factors are currently getting validated. We're doing our annual validation across the ISO standards. So if you're looking to get your inventory validated, our emissions factors will be a critical part in supporting that effort. Okay, I think I've made it through a lot of these. If any additional questions come up, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. it is, the way that we frankly get better and learn and grow our own platform is by working with you and talking with you and understanding your distinct challenges and nuances. And then, of course, they are distinct and nuanced, but are they? Right? It's building all of that solutioning into the platform so that companies at large that are struggling with many of the same issues, have the right tools to practically approach them. And there was another question actually that came in on differentiation, and that's a really important one, right? Is that you can build the perfect tool that works off the perfect primary data, but that's not the reality of where we are. So much of where we are is in that data filling and interpolation and extrapolation. And that's okay. That is okay to do in an inventory. The whole point is having the autonomy and the security and the ownership to properly disclose what your emissions are, what they represent, what they don't, what the methodology was, how it got there. So much of that audit feature that Jasmine was reviewing really facilitates that back-end transparency, so that whether you're doing an internal audit or a third-party verification or assurance, again, all of the back-end transparency into the line item calculations of what is this information? How did we get it? What does it represent? So
And there is just one last question that came in,
please.
Alyssa, which I can answer. Someone asked, does the system support the social and governance activities and data inputs? And we do. As I mentioned, under the measure section, we primarily measure environmental indicators, filtering into carbon emissions, wastewater energy, but we also have built in social and governance sections to measure those high-level inputs as well. We understand that our customers might be focusing on E metrics, but also want to measure S&G in the same place. So we have prioritized that work earlier in the year, and we actually have a webinar that we did earlier in the year that we can share as well. That goes into a lot more detail about the types of indicators that are supported there.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I don't know how it works if we end this, but we do have one member, Kate, who's in the background here trying to answer these questions. Kate, if you can drop in the social and governance webinar into this anonymous post, that would be great. And I would say for a lot of these, we do encourage you. We maintain all of these recorded webinars are maintained on our blog. You can search for the tag of webinar. And so any of these questions that you've asked about the audit and verification, the supplier engagement, social and governance, we of course always want to share all the work that we're doing and building into the platform. And so you can often view those product walkthroughs, and it's recordings very similar to this one. So definitely please do check those out on our blog, because you'll learn a whole lot about our capability and our approach and our point of view. And if it's resonating with you, that's great. We'd love to talk to you about it. Okay, great. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. It was really a pleasure, and we'll see you for the next one. And thank you, Jasmine, for the walkthrough.
Of course. Thanks everyone for joining.